Hi, Kylie here. Welcome to my plan with me for November 2025. So this month the theme is about the sky. Well, that was the plan. So, maybe rainy skies, clouds, the night sky. As I was going through and thinking about it though, I decided to make it a little bit more landscape. I still have a couple that are really just sky, but the sky connects with the ground. So, let's put some landscape in there as well. And I took a little bit of it as inspiration from our trip to the Northern Territory in July, but we'll get to that. So my title page is a pop-up this month. So here are the little bits and pieces that are going to go into it. I don't know why, but I pretty much always do my draw and paint my pop-ups prior to actually doing it. I don't know why I treat it differently to a normal title, but that's what I do, and we don't try to understand what Kylie's brain does. So the quote for this month is, "People don't alter history any more than birds alter the sky. They just make brief patterns in it." And that is from the Terry Pratchett book, Morphed, which I've recently re-listened to. If you were here, I don't know, it was last month, the month before. Anyway, probably last month, I mentioned that I've been listening to the entire Discworld series on Audible, basically because I listened to one and death was in it, and I really enjoyed listening to Peter Serafinowicz do death. So, I'm currently out of credits with Audible, and I've only got 7 books left. So I'm just going back actually and re-listening to some. I recently finished re-listening to all the books about the witches, and now I'm actually listening to the ones about death. So that's why I recently re-listened to Mort, and I'm currently listening to Reaper Man. So yeah, I don't know why, but at the moment there are still a couple of podcasts that I'm listening to, but I've just, been put off a bit from some podcasts, and I'm not listening to them as much as I was. Not entirely sure what that's about, but anyway. So I've done the quote, and then I've drawn basically a bird flying through the sky with a couple of clouds. And yeah, a rather stylized bird, because I sort of quite like this. I've seen it in a range of different places, mainly on sort of Scandinavian design type things. And that's the sort of bird that I decided to draw. So you might notice, or you might have noticed, I'm actually doing this all a lot slower than I normally do. Normally, I speed everything up at about sort of 800% as to the time it actually took me to draw it. I've decided to slow that down a bit so you can actually see a little bit more of the drawing. I did have the thought, and you might notice, sometimes you might notice my hands moving like I'm talking, because I did have the thought of actually recording all the audio for this while I was drawing and just basically releasing it in actual time. It sort of did work and sort of didn't work. Definitely didn't work with the quote. Apparently it's very difficult to talk about things while you're also trying to do words. Makes logical sense. And then, I sort of went through, and everything just took too long. And I'm like, I can't put up a video that's an hour and 45 minutes. That's just ludicrous. So basically the most, this is at 500%. So this is 5 times faster than I did it. But a lot of them are at 300 and 200. So there you go. I'm just switching things up and seeing how they work. First week, I've got an aeroplane flying over some clouds. For this, I've been using my Winsor & Newton colour palette, so my watercolours. And the reason I chose them was because that's the colour palette I used when I was painting my travel journal. since I was inspired by some of the landscapes and skies I did there, I thought that would be a good colour palette to use again. But as you may have noticed, so it doesn't have a black. So when I tried to make a bit of a grey for the bottom of the clouds, it turned green. So it looked a little bit like the planes flying over some bushes, but they're clouds. So yeah, anyway. Week 2, I decided that I would use the inspiration of being Uluru. So this will be a sunrise because I didn't have clouds for my sunset. But, that's neither here nor there, but, just a little part of my brain. This is sunrise, so this is one end of the very large monolithic block of rock that is Uluru. So October was good. I got quite a bit done, which was good. Still not a lot of client work. I've got a little bit more this month. I've just been drawing for the last 2 days, which was really, I really enjoyed it. A very interesting group that were talking about some very important things. It's nice when I feel like I can contribute to something like that, which is good. I also progressed a lot on personal projects. So my Oracle cards are done. They're pretty much ready to go. I'm doing a final edit of them all at the moment. I had been contemplating doing a Kickstarter. I think I mentioned that in the last video. And I was working towards creating all the collateral for that because you've got to have video and everything. So I had to do mock-ups and all that sort of stuff. And I was trying to pull everything together and I got to the point I sat down and did the maths on it and really had a look at how those sorts of products generally go on Kickstarter. They don't generally go exceptionally well. And I sort of just thought to myself, why? For the amount of money that I would lose to Kickstarter, I'm probably better off sort of advertising somewhere else or, thinking about it in a different way. So I decided that I wasn't going to do a Kickstarter and felt instantaneously relieved. So I think it was the right decision to not do that. But that means that I'm making the decision. I'm only ordering 200 sets of the Oracle cards because, I'm not entirely sure. The book is different because the book I have a market for in the people the people that I train, and it's a very sort of marketable thing, whereas the Oracle cards are different. So, I've got to find a way to market them and a place for them to be, and I'm not notoriously pretty, I'm not good at it. I'm notoriously pretty bad at doing that sort of marketing and everything else. So I decided I wouldn't take the risk of having 500 sets in my house and also the expense of having, purchased them if I'm not confident I can sell that many. So that decision's at least made, and like I said, I'm doing the final edit, and really, that shouldn't take me too much longer to do. The only way that it might take me a little bit of time is because I do have some more client work than I have had recently. So we'll see how that goes. So for week 3, I decided that I would try to paint the Milky Way and paint the nebula. Now, I think I should have just left it at this. Okay, no. Look, this is not an easy thing to paint. I had to go and get a colour palette that had black in it, of course. But this is what I'm trying to paint. So you can see how difficult this is going to be, particularly in watercolour. That was the inspiration of the previous one as well. This is actually, just quickly, we did a photo book up of some of our photos from our trip to the Northern Territory. That is a photo book, and not sponsored, not anything by them. I'm just going to say I found it. It's a lay flat book. The colours have come out fantastically, and we are going to I'm sure, produce a number of them as we sort of go through and, both do our photography and travel and everything. It came out gorgeous. So if you're in Australia, photo book, have a look at it if you want to do any of that sort of thing. Highly recommend. Look, doing this sort of thing in watercolour on paper that is not watercolour paper is not ideal. The paper, I've talked about this before, it just sucks water in. And so you can't really do blending. You end up with, lots of lines and those sorts of things as you're going through and doing it. And you just can't blend in a way that works well for this sort of painting. So in a way, I'm like, I shouldn't have even tried. But in another way, I'm like, no, I'm not unhappy with how it came out. But I just know that if I was doing it on watercolour paper and I could have blended more and, created a little bit more of the cloud in sort of like a blended way, then I would have felt happier about it. But this is where we are, and I'm not, it's my bullet journal. It's the place where I play and go through and do these things. So anyway, it's really funny, the dots in these bullet journals sort of don't take colour. So I've already got like some spots like, possibly stars. But I decided I would get out my Dr. P.H. Martin's, the bleed proof white, and add some more stars into the night sky. Not nearly as many as were actually there. And I will note, if you've never painted like stars like this, or any sort of random pattern that might occur, it's really difficult to paint random. As a human, we are generally quite pattern related, and my brain is definitely pattern focused. So as much as I try to make things random and everything, you'll notice things still line up. It's just one of those things that happens. But yeah, because you can't paint white watercolour on top of watercolour and actually have it show up in any meaningful way. So, you sort of have to have a different option, which is what the bleed proof white is. And I love it. It's a very good product for that sort of thing. I could have also used, a white sort of like gel pen or acrylic pen. I could have done that as well, but I like the bleed proof white. So we're on the final week and I decided to just paint clouds. I do not know why my mouth is not working properly today, but I decided to do just some clouds because it's the sky. And clouds are interesting to paint. I haven't done a large number of them in watercolour. I've tried to avoid it a bit because, again, white and watercolour is a little bit challenging. And the idea of painting clouds is that the underneath of the cloud is, darker because it can't see the sun. The sun is above it. Depending on the type of cloud, of course, but these big fluffy clouds, basically the sun is hitting the top of the cloud, so it's nice and white, and then underneath is grey. And depending on the clouds, it might be greyer if they're sort of, rain clouds and those sorts of things, but that wasn't really what I was going for here. I have painted clouds a bit in acrylic paint in the past, but I haven't done a lot of them in watercolour. And like I said, it's the whole thing around white is a bit challenging. So while I did paint white on the tops of these, it is in watercolour and the paper behind it is white, obviously. So it's more like it's a bit like negative painting at this point where just the bits, it's not very thick or detailed, sort of like white watercolour in there because you don't really see very much of it. So I decided I would go back through with the bleed proof white and just touch up some of that white and just make it a little bit brighter and make it stand out a little bit more, just to sort of define a bit more of the texture. As I was going through and doing it, I thought to myself, why did you do this? You should have just left it alone. But at the end, I'm quite happy with it. So, yeah, that's where we are. Oracle cards will definitely be ready at the end of November. Will have been sent off to the printer before the end of November. So when I come back here to record my November bullet journal, I'll be able to say, yeah, the Oracle cards, the proofing's been done and just waiting for it all to happen now. So, you can hold me to that. That's what's going to happen. All right, let's go back and do the pop-up. Let's do the title page. I'm doing this one, it's only like 150%. So it's only, 1.5 times the speed that I actually did it in. And remembering that I was talking through while I was doing it. So I was doing it particularly slow. So I've just sped it up a little bit. So there are 4 components to this. There's the sky, which is a sunset. And then there is sort of like the mountains. So the big part of the landscape. And then there are some bits in the front. So these are V folds. When you V pointing down, you're setting it up so it folds towards the bottom of the book. So you've just got to make sure that it's not going to crash off the edge of that page, which it doesn't have a problem with. Basically, you stick down one side, then you fold it over, take off the other bit of double-sided tape for like the double-sided tape, and then all you do is squish it down. And this is why V-folds are great, because they're that easy to put in. You don't need any maths, you don't need any marking, you don't have to measure or calculate anything. They are as simple as that in the process. Which means, they are very simple mechanisms. This is a very simple pop-up. I'm not claiming that it's not. I would like to try and get a more complex one in my bullet journal, but, this is where we are. So then the other one, same thing. It's the same sort of V-fold to go in front of it. So, make sure that there's enough sort of space visually for that to happen. Now with this, you've got to be really careful, because if I just did the same thing, it'd stick to that. So you've got to sort of bring it over the edge of the other V-fold so that it sticks in the right place rather than it, sticking to the sky and messing it all up. So you just need to sort of make sure that's okay. Now, if you're looking top down on this, then of course there's all the white space in between and everything. This pop-up, because it's a V-fold, it's meant to be looked at like sort of horizontal eye level so that you actually get the effect of the pop-up. So you don't sort of get that by watching me do what I'm doing, but yeah. So these elements basically stick to the front, and they need a little mechanism to pull them up. When the mountains get lifted by opening, then you need to pull them up. What I did though was I forgot that the mechanism really doesn't like it if I fold that backwards. So that really needs to be folded frontwards, which means the tape needs to be put onto the other side. I've just sped this up because you don't need to watch me putting double-sided tape on and correcting all of that. So, all right, we're back and fixed. So this mechanism is honestly just, the top and bottom is the same length and the sides are the same length. You stick it down to the bottom of the page. That side will stick to like my little rock and tree, and then that bit sticks on the back of the mountains. So it's got some tension. It's got a little bit of, structure to be able to pull this other piece up. So you fold that front bit in so you can get in nice and close and it won't stick in the wrong place, and then stick it against. I think that my top is a tiny little bit, like they're not exactly the same length. It's probably just like 2 millimeters too long, which is why it's not quite folding back as far as I would like it to. But you've got to be really careful that you don't make it too short, because it will then stop it being able to lay flat when the book is shut. So it's a fine line. You really should have them exactly equal, and I should have measured it rather than just, eyeballing it, but we do things. And what I realised after I did the trees and everything was that you were going to be able to see the mechanism through the gap in the trees, which is why I'm now sticking a little bush on the back, and that is literally there to just hide this mechanism. So it's got something to stick completely against, so it's not just trying to stick against a thin piece of cardboard, but also mainly to hide the mechanism. I don't have to do it. This is my bullet journal. It doesn't have to be perfect, which, as you've seen, it's not. But yeah, that's the reason that that little bush is there. So again, you stick that onto the back mechanism and then fold this big bit up and really get it in tight with the bottom of that mechanism. And you have your pop-up. So yeah, a little bit different in how I've sort of done this month, a little bit more explaining what I've been doing. So I hope that you've enjoyed it. Let me know whether it makes any difference to you, whether I do it at slower speed or whether you like it sped up. Of course, you're free to speed it up to whatever speed you would like on YouTube. But yeah, I hope that you've all had a nice October, and I really hope that you have a nice November as well. I really will endeavour to actually get a bullet journal draw out before the end of November, because there is something else that I want to share with you. I've got a freebie sort of email course that I'll put a little video out about. It's something I did in 2018 that I'm doing again this year. So I will put something out about that in the next couple of weeks if you're interested in signing up to that. But yeah, I really hope that you'll have a nice time. As always, I always appreciate you being here and giving me any of your time, especially if you listen to this and listen to me ramble. I mean, okay. I hope you get something out of it. But here is my bullet journal for November. I finally got another pop-up in, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it all came out. So thank you for being here. Have a lovely November. Like, subscribe if you wish. And I look forward to sharing December's draw with you at the end of the month. Thanks a lot. I'll see you then. Bye.